Hello, welcome back to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. My name is Emil. It's another episode of Extra-Tyne. It's our new little thing to make up for the fact that we haven't got any fan cams. And it was a 1-1 for Newcastle versus Aston Villa. Plenty to talk about because it was so close to the last game where we thrashed Sheffield United with 10 men. But this one was a little bit different. I'm joined today by Kris, who we'll all be very familiar with from the channel. We've also got Daryl, who you might know from the fan cams. And we've got Paul, all the way over in Barcelona, who's speaking to us today. So cheers for joining us, lads. Right, so we'll get straight in, shall we? I know that everyone will be dying to answer this question, but I'll go to Daryl. Can you sum up that first half performance for us?
Instantly forgettable.
Yeah,
definitely.
What reasons? Can you give us anything more than that?
I don't really remember much happening, to be fair. It was just we just snuffed each other out. There wasn't really any effective play. We didn't offer anything. They didn't offer anything. It was all cancelled out in the middle of the park, really. Kept Grealish quiet, which we did for most of the game, to be fair. But it was just, well, there you go. Yeah. Forget about it.
Yeah. We went in with an unchanged lineup. Paul, did you think that was the sensible option?
I thought so, to be honest. I couldn't see the sense in rotating a lineup that had just played so well. I understand that we've obviously got City in the Cup, and unfortunately, I just saw just before I came on, I saw that apparently Richie and Hayden were both withdrawn with soft tissue injuries. But I imagine that that's probably more of a precaution that they were taking off rather than anything else. I think a bit of momentum for the Cup would be good, and I think if it means that after City we rotate and play, a bit more, then I think it's probably the right idea. I understand why maybe we should have rotated one or two players, but I thought the way that the team played last time out, there isn't anyone who could have been dropped without feeling aggrieved, in my opinion.
Yeah. Kris, you're looking suitably red there after your little bike ride home. But you're probably the best person to ask now if you reckon the heat was a major contributory factor with this performance, or do you think it was just down to the general tired legs?
Yeah, I don't think you can blame it on the heat, mate. These are athletes at the end of the day, so if you're going to blame our performance on heat, then you've got to look at Villa as well. Same conditions there. First off, like Daryl said, it was pretty. Nothing happened. Newcastle were probably backs against the wall first half. Villa had the majority of chances there. A couple of times where they should have been 1-2, 3-0 up, where they had decent chances and just a couple of capitalised on it. So I think we're lucky going in that break at nils each.
Yeah, I think it was all right. I mean, I saw a few people writing it off straight away. The usual meltdown started, but it's interesting we said about the momentum going at the Cup, Paul, but it was the substitutions that changed the game. We'll get onto the goals and stuff, but in terms of the person who was still performing to the best of his ability, despite everything, was Alan Saint-Maximin. He's had another good game in there. Daryl, do you think that he is just the man we have to get the ball to, like Robbie Savage was saying on the commentary?
I don't like to agree with Robbie Savage, but yes, I think we're very blessed that we've got him. You've got to look at the other clubs certainly around us in the bottom half of the table. They don't really have anybody like him, and yeah, I think you also have to bring Almiron into the argument as well, because both of them have got that electrifying pace that causes people problems, and we've seen that today. I mean, there was a bit in the second half where Saint-Maximin did that pirouette to set himself up for a shot on goal, and then he just sent Mings onto the floor. I mean, it was just lovely to see. And I think he's going to be, for what's left of this season, he's going to be a major player in how we do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, certainly think so. Villa looked all right, Paul. Do you think we were threatened too much by them in the first half? They were the Trezeguet chance, but I think apart from that, until the very end, they kind of brought a few bits and bobs to us.
First half, I didn't think they looked like much at all, and I don't think we did either, really. Towards the end of the match, though, definitely we were clinging on at the end. I think they were probably the better team in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes or so. But I don't think they looked very good, to be honest. I think they showed that their team's not particularly strong in depth, is it? Once we snuffed Grealish out, which we did from the start of the game, they didn't really have much else. Even the commentator was saying, a couple times in, Grealish had a couple long shots and stuff. Now it came of it, but the commentators were saying, like, oh, this is the lad they want to get the ball to. They've got to get it to Grealish for anything to happen. And I didn't really think they'd think too much of them, to be honest.
Yeah. Kris, are you disappointed with a point from Villa? Did you think this was the way it would go going into these couple of games? Sheffield United being the one that I reckon not a lot of people expected to get much from.
I wouldn't say I'm disappointed, mate. If you look at the last result and this result, getting 4 points out of 6 on the return after that huge break, it's probably up there with the best restarts that we could probably think of. And look at other teams that have been in the exact same situation. But to quickly go back to that first half, I thought there was a couple of chances which Villa had from the right-hand side where there's a couple of balls coming in, deadly balls. And if that's us delivering that ball, I'm absolutely furious that one of our players isn't getting on the end of that, because there was twice that I can remember from that right hand side where the ball's land in the 6-yard box and they've either completely missed the chance or it's gone over the bar and wide of the post. But I think looking at it, 4 points from 6, like I said, though, you've got to say well done, lads. That's us safe now, really, especially against the teams that we're playing against. It's teams that we're looking at being up against in regards to relegation, so it's decent points at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think we've got to be happy with that, to be honest. I thought that Sheffield United was going to be the one that we drew. I thought Villa was the one that we were going to win. But as we've seen time and time again with Newcastle, it does seem to be that we don't play as well against the team around us. It's the ones up above which we just have worldies against. So I don't know what the science is behind that. Maybe someone could enlighten me a bit better. Steve Bruce is still waiting for 3 consecutive Premier League games in a row since 2009. Which I thought was one of my favourite stats going into this one. That was when he was with Wigan. So, maybe that answers a few questions of why he shouldn't be the one taking us forward in a takeover situation. Kris, I know you mentioned there about what you'd be disappointed with Newcastle, but Paul, I'll just come at you with this one.
Yeah.
Was there anyone who you were massively disappointed with today?
I thought there were.
I've got time, by the way.
I thought there were a few players who didn't play particularly well today. I didn't think Almiron was up to much at all. I think the thing about him is that he's very, very one-dimensional. He's got his pace and he runs direct at goal. And what he does really, really well is get the ball out of defence and just get it up to the other end of the half, win a free kick, something like that. Kind of like what Jonas used to do back in the day as well. He's a bit more direct and a bit more attacking than Jonas is, but I thought today he just looked lost. He didn't really do much at all. His first touch a couple of times was shocking. He had a chance when the ball landed to him in the box and he tried to take a touch and just messed it up. So I didn't think much of him today. I thought Shelvey started really, really well, but I thought he faded fast towards the end, and I thought that's probably just tiredness, but still, it's maybe a decision that Bruce should have made to take him off, but I don't think he was firing on all cylinders towards the end at all. And sadly, I think Dubravka cost us that game with a dodgy bit of keeping.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that is unpopular and it's controversial to say, but I think he's done quite a few times. It's something that he needs to improve. It's the reason why he's at us, basically, and not at a better team, because he's got ability and he's got, he's an incredible shot stopper, but he is prone to the odd mistake, and he does keep us in so many games as well, but at the same time he loses us points by dropping occasional clangers like that, and it's just a real shame that you can't have that consistency.
I don't know if anyone's got Villa fans nearby, but I'm sure I can hear fireworks going on.
I know, I could hear the fireworks as well.
That's actually me. Sorry, it's Noche de San Juan here today in Spain, and they celebrated it with fireworks. Oh, okay. So sorry if you can hear fireworks in the background.
I wondered. It was like Dubravka cost us the game. I was like, what's going on here?
I've got a question. Emil, are you eating your tea right now?
I am, yeah. I've this has happened twice with Extra-Tyne now. I've had a pizza go cold halfway through. I'm desperately trying to eat this pasta, but that's the price you pay for Newcastle United.
Do you do this on the radio, mate, or is it just It
was quite nice, actually. Anyway,
Jesus Christ.
I had another question. Look, we can't do this on the fan cams, like with a burger in hand from that nice place.
George does it.
Daryl, get me out of this horrible situation. Do you agree with the Dubravka comments?
Yes and no, because if you got to look at it statistically here, and the guy, he's made the most saves out of any keeper in the league this season. And if you've got to face more shots than anybody else, then you're more likely to make mistakes. Over the averages, your mistakes are going to tally up because you've had to face more shots. So I think if he was quieter, you'd probably say he was making less mistakes.
Kris, do you reckon that he was left exposed? There was a few questions about Rose leaving the back post, Shelby being in his way.
I don't think you can look at the back post, mate. Everything's at near post. I think Dubravka position is right. Of course, Shelby's in front of him, and if I was Dubravka in that instance, you would expect Shelby to clear the ball. It goes straight under his foot. But just like Paul said, at the end of the day, you still expect your keeper to save that shot. A glancing head at the front post, it's bad to see that hit the back of the net. Like, so, despite Shelby being there, Dubravka has to save that. Like,
do you reckon it's anything to do with the game time, Kris? I'll stay with you with that one. Just with Dubravka coming back, do you think that for goalkeepers it's the same as tiredness for the players who are running around?
Nah, not all. Your goalkeeper, let's be honest with you, he's not an outfield player that's up and down the pitch, left, right, and centre. Of course, concentration levels have to be at the peak there. But nah, I don't think it's anything to do with a break, like a game time or anything like that. He's just he has to be in a position now where worst case scenario, he's not expecting Shelby to clear that ball, so he has to make that save or at least attempt to get to the ground before Shelby's even made contact with that ball. So like Paul said, that probably is the reason why Dubravka is at Newcastle United. He's not playing European football. He's not playing Champions League football. Same with San Maximum. There's a reason why they're not at a top club. So he's a fantastic keeper, but he's got the mistake in him. And would I change him right now for another keeper? Of course not. Course, I wouldn't, but it's a mistake. It happens, but you just move to the next game. Forget it's happened. We didn't lose the game, so
yeah, exactly. I think that the fact that it was a point still means that he got off the hook slightly from the brigade of Newcastle supporters calling for his head. But the other thing is, who else would you put in that situation? I mean, do you risk Daryl for the next game? Of course not. It's a mistake. It happens. We just have to deal with it. Seen various comments about Danny Rose in the build-up to the two games after Sheffield United. He seems to be a guy who has a game of two halves. Daryl, did you rate his performance? I know we saw some decent defence in the second half with a good challenge.
Yeah, we did. I think overall, I would say he was probably not. He's not up to that sort of standard. He seems a bit slow and sluggish to me at times, but I honestly can't fault some of the tackles he's put in today. That one in the second half where he could quite easily have brought the man down for a penalty and he got his foot in there first and played it out. I think the jury with him is still out with me. I want to see a bit more from him in the last few games before I make my mind up. As it stands, I wouldn't keep him.
Sorry, I mean my teeth. I saw Kris going and I went myself. With Villa, there's a lot of talk about Grealish in terms of who he would take off Villa's hands. After that performance, Paul, do you reckon that he's the great shakes that everyone says he is?
I don't think he played too well today, but to be honest, I think it's quite harsh to judge him in that team because Villa are rubbish. So, basically just he's their only decent player, and I think if you put him at a bigger club, a better team, basically, you put him in a better 11, I think you'd see him getting, goals and getting assists and whatever else. And if you could rely on the quality around him, then I think he'd do better. In terms of how good he is, I'll be honest, I don't really know. He looks decent to me. Like, he's obviously got quality, but I just find it interesting that he's been hyped for quite a long time, and it's still spent quite a bit of time. Well, still spent all this time with just Villa, and he's been linked with big moves away for a good few years now, and it's just never quite materialised. And maybe it's something that we don't necessarily see just by watching him. Maybe it's something that goes on in the background or something. But it's just interesting to me that he hasn't been snapped up by a bigger team.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the same reason for him. There's a reason why he's at Villa or something like that. I think there's plenty of performances today which we saw people playing quite well. I think Manquillo was good towards the end in helping us hang on. But it was all about the substitutions. So we'll get into the nice bit now of this chat. We've done all of the really horrible bits. On came Andy Carroll for Joe Linton. I don't think Joe Linton had many talking points today that kind of, either way for that matter, good or bad. But Carroll comes on, Gale comes on shortly afterwards for the injured Richie, and suddenly it changes. Carroll now has as many assists as Ozil has or something in this season, I think. Andy Carroll, there's talk of him getting this contract extension. Kris, would you have him back again?
I think it's a no-brainer, mate. He's on what? He's on like a rumour to be on around about 30 grand a week minimum. Then obviously he's got his bonuses on top of that. It's free money when you look at it. He comes on. That's the second time we've probably seen him change the game this season. I probably think he's only made 8 appearances, but he's that sort of figure on the bench where if you bring him on the pitch, things will change. Even if it's hitting up top. Obviously, the benefit that he has and what Joe Linton didn't have is that he's got someone alongside him in Gale. So if he knocks that on, you've got Gale there to run through. But what I do want to mention about Joe Linton is that he learned his lesson from that first game against Sheffield United. So he gets through on goal there and he takes that shot with his left foot, which he failed to do against Sheffield. So he's learned his lesson there. It was a decent shot. If it wasn't for the block from Mings, that's hitting the back of the net. So you've got to give him the tiny bit of credit on there. But once again, you can't really compare him to Carroll because every time Carroll comes on the pitch, he has a second striker along with him, and Joe doesn't have that option.
Yeah. It was good to see Gale and Carroll working together. It's something I've wanted to see all season long. Daryl, Gale comes on. He scored his first goal since the Chelsea home game at the end of I think it was the 17-18 season. It was the 3-0 Chelsea. He took it well, didn't he?
He took it really well. I've got to say that the ball in from Big Andy was absolutely fantastic, and that first touch of Gale just took it away from the defender, and he just slotted it coolly past the keeper. It was a great finish.
Yeah, I was really impressed with that. Paul, would you stick either of those two in the starting lineup for the next game or games?
It's quite interesting because I was actually talking about this the other day, and I was saying that I think one of the things that Joe Linton lacks compared to Gale is a bit of pace to keep up with Maximin and Almiron. And I think even when if you look at there was I think it might have been the first goal that Almiron scored this season. It was Gale who set it up for him by getting in the box. The thing that Gale does is he gets in the box and he gets in behind and he's there and thereabouts, which Joe Linton isn't doing yet. He did it once against Sheffield United. It led to the goal, but there were so many other times before that when you were watching him, you'd see a ball go in and you'd think, why is Joe Linton not there? Like, do you know, why is our striker not first man in the box trying to get that? So it would be interesting to see him start. I think he could produce a more mobile front three. The only problem is that if you started with Gale, is that we lose that sort of presence up top that Joe Linton gives or Carroll gives. We wouldn't be able to play long balls and hope that someone can bring it down and control it in the same way that Joe Linton does or Carroll does. So we'd have to change the way we played a little bit. But in terms of keeping up with players like Gale and Almiron, keeping up with players like Almiron and Saint-Maximin, I think Gale's probably the best choice.
Yeah. Daryl, was it inspired choices by Bruce today with the substitutions?
Well, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? It definitely was. He made them. I think he probably made the subs at the right time, and they had such an immediate impact on the game. It's certainly credit to Bruce for making the decision to make that change.
Yeah, it's impressive, and I think a lot of people have given him credit on the back of that one. Right, we'll have a quick look at the star man. I mean, I'm sure that everyone's in agreement with this, but I think, has everyone gone for Saint-Maximin? Has anyone gone different from Saint-Maximin?
I'd probably say it's on par. You know, I think Saint and Hayden are on par with each other because going into a game against Villa, the one man you're gonna want to cancel out the game is Grealish, and he done absolutely nothing for that game, and that's credit to Hayden. I said to you, he's like our little firefighter in there. He's putting out fires left, right, and centre in that middle of the pitch there. And we're sort to the reverse fixture at Villa Park. Grealish run absolutely wild against us. And I think Hayden's kept him quiet there. Like, you have to give him credit.
Yeah, I like that. Isaac Hayden's the key worker of Newcastle United right there. I'm
gonna go clap for him right now, mate.
Paul, Isaac Hayden's had a hell of a comeback. Do you rate him going forward?
I think he's class. I think it's a bit of an interesting one though, because all I see ever about Isaac Hayden is everyone talking about how he's underrated and unsung hero and all this sort of stuff. But that's all I see about him. So it suggests that he actually is probably quite highly rated by some of our fans now. I think he did have a spell when he was maybe slightly unsung and maybe slightly underappreciated. But honestly, I think the last couple of seasons, I think he's just his work rate and energy in midfield in the centre just helps us get a vital foothold into games. And I think with the change in formation that Bruce has gone for with Gannon 4 at the back, where we had 3 at the back, we used to rely on Cher and Lejeune to play sort of long balls out to the wings or up to the strikers. Now that we've gone 2 at the back and we're playing with Federico Fernandez and Lascelles, neither of them are going to play balls like they do. So Shelvey has to do that. So he basically gets quite a bit of responsibility put on him as like a quarterback sort of player, which means that he needs space and he needs time. And someone like Hayden is there to do the dirty work that gives him a bit of time and space to actually play the sort of, the balls forwards that actually can help us create stuff today. So Hayden, I think he's brilliant. I think he's one of the better players that we've got in the team. I think certainly, in my opinion, our best centre midfielder.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. Daryl, there's been a lot of talk that Hayden could easily slide into an Arsenal team where he came from. Do you see him making that step up, or do you reckon that he'll always be a middling side player?
Well, if he was to go to Arsenal as Arsenal stand, he would go to another mid-table team, wouldn't he? But I think it's refreshing that, that a couple of years ago he came out and said, look, I need to move back down south for family reasons. And ever since that came, he got stick at the time for making that statement. But ever since that moment, he's been a completely different player, and he's absolutely grafted his backside off. And I think through doing that, he's endeared himself to the supporters. I kind of thought his work rate and he's come back in this since restart, and he's been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I think that's your video clip there, Kris, in terms of Isaac Hayden.
Before we move on to the next one, though, I think you've got to give credit to Lascelles as well. Since the last 2 games as well, Lascelles has been absolutely fantastic as well. I've been a huge critic of Lascelles since day one. I've never really been comfortable with him being in the team. I've always thought that he always got his place because he's solely captain of the club. But I'll hold my hands up and say that he's been great this season. He makes everyone around him, the defenders around him, look that next level, and credit to him.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just going to say with Lascelles, in particular with the goal celebrations, Lascelles is there and he's always thereabouts. But the one that really struck me was against Sheffield when Joe Linton got his goal and he was straight over, almost as if he knew he was going to do the whole the baby celebration. He was having a go at Carroll's top knots in the celebrations for this one, which I thought was great. There's just that any time he's on the pitch, Lascelles just seems to have the team together. It might not be the best performance, but he's got that thing that just pushes it forward. What were you going to say, Paul?
I was just saying I completely agree with that. I think Lascelles, there was a spell when I wasn't sure how he was going to fit into the team again after because he spent a little bit of time out, and we had 3 at the back. We had Dummett, Cher and Lejeune all playing brilliantly, and it was going to be, there was a spell where I wasn't quite sure exactly how he was going to come back in. But I think this season, what's been interesting is just how much strength and depth we've had in defence. Kieran Clark and Federico Fernandez and Lascelles have all been fantastic. Fernandez as well, I think, doesn't get enough appreciation. Well, maybe this season he has because he's been brilliant. But yeah, I think I think the pair of them are brilliant. I think for 4 at the back, like we've been playing the last couple of games and just before the break, I think Lascelles and Federico Fernandez are much better suited to that than Lejeune and Cher are. And I think now that we've eliminated the need for a ball-playing defender, because we don't play football in that way, then I think those 2 are the best 2 defensive defenders that we have. And so I think both of them easily deserve their starting spot at the minute.
Yeah, I was just going to mention there on the defence, Kris, I know you obviously said you're a big fan of Lascelles in this situation, but we've seen a change in the fortunes of Newcastle's defence since Rafa came, and it's continued into this now. I remember a lot of people said, did Newcastle just forget what Benitez taught them at first? But it's clearly had an influence on our defence.
It has, mate, but I think you've got to look at how blessed we are now with especially centre backs. You've got five players there fighting for a position, and like Paul mentioned there, even Kieran Clark. We forget about how good of a season he has. He had at the very start of the season. He's massively underappreciated right now at this club. He's even if Lascelles or Fernandez was to drop out of that team now, if Clark gets put in alongside one of those, I'm not worried about that. Same with Lejeune, same with Fabian Schär. We're so blessed right now, and I can't remember a time as a fan of Newcastle United when we've been in this sort of position where if one of your defenders gets injured, you don't mind. It's ridiculous because normally I'm really worried, but right now you could injure two of them, would be alright.
We'll just do it for a laugh, shall we? You know,
Aye,
BB
yeah.
going to the knee. Just take
Let's
it
have
out.
the weekend off. Have the weekend off, lads. Worried.
I know, soft
Well, do you know what I'm
tissues
saying?
dropping
Like,
out.
let's say if Lascelles and Fernandez get injured, if you go and put Fabian Schär and Clark in there, you'd be like, all right, we'll be all right.
Yeah, I know. We're really lucky with what we've got there. I know we kind of strayed from the point there, but Paul, did you say your star man was Saint-Maximin as well? Do you reckon?
I thought overall, over the course of the full match, probably Saint-Maximin. I thought Shelby was really good at the start of the game, which anyone who knows me knows that took a lot for me to say because I don't really Shelby much at all. Like
shots. There you
go. But I thought he started really brightly, faded. I thought Saint-Maximin was is definitely the danger man for us pretty much all the time. I think he's a little frustrating at times because he is the only person who creates, and so quite often there's more of a focus if he does make a little bit of a mistake or if he does lose the ball or whatever. But never goes missing, always trying to create something, always capable of just one little turn. Like I can't remember who it was who mentioned it, but he pirouetted and stuck on the defenders on their arse and just legged it, and always capable of doing that straight away.
I think it was Daryl who mentioned the pirouette. No surprises there, Daryl. Is he your star man as well?
Yeah, definitely, and I think Isaac Hayden's the very, very close second.
Yeah, and Kris, you're going for Hayden with your final one there.
Mate, but I love Saint. I love him.
Hey,
mate.
look, the thing is, what you can rely on with Saint-Maximin is that if he doesn't get Starman in this one, he's probably going to get it in the next one. I
love him. I love him. I think we mentioned it on the last podcast that we did with the all smiling faces lads. It seems like he's learned his lesson, and maybe Bruce has took him to one side. And when he's in the box, he's not trying to do all the trickery. He's literally getting to the byline and cutting it back in. And we haven't seen that. Of course, middle of the pitch, he's snapping ankles left, right, and centre. But when he's in the box, he's cutting it back, and he was absolutely going wild at the players where he got the byline, he cut it back, and nobody was there. He was going wild at them, and that's what you want from your winger. Of course, I want him to be kicking the ball left, right, and centre at people's heads, making them do splits and stuff, mate. Like Mings was. I think Mings, like, his bollocks were touching the pitch at one point, but he's fantastic, mate. You've just got to look at that player and admire like what he's bringing to this team right now, because without him, we are shite.
So from that, I think we can tell that Kris has definitely changed his mind.
I love him, mate. I love him.
Look, staying true to the fan cams here. Paul, you're a man with a magnificent piece of facial hair, but what do you reckon Andy Carroll calls his sideburns?
Oh.
If you had a nickname, one for each, what would you have?
One for each? I don't know.
One's got to be Stephen Taylor, mate. He's got to go
Stephen and Taylor. Stephen and Taylor, one each side.
Call him Turner and Hooch based on what he...
I was thinking of maybe Kevin and Joey, just with the triangular formation that he's got going on. But I'm not too sure. We've got a horrible game coming up next. However, I've seen the words written down that Pep Guardiola sees this game against Newcastle as a final. As a final, lads. Man City are officially scared of Newcastle. How scared are we, Daryl?
Well, as an admirer of Pep for many, many years, I'm always a bit nervous when we come up against one of his sides. But, anything's possible. We've done it before. Why not do it again?
Yeah. Kris, are you confident after those two performances? Do you reckon anything's going to change massively with the lineup? Would you like to see anything?
I wouldn't say I'm confident, mate, going into a game against Man City. I don't think that's ever the case. It's a free hit, isn't it, for Newcastle right now? If you come up with a team against like some Man City who players are absolutely fantastic, if you lose that game, you've just got to say fair enough what I expect in that one. But I'm really, really gutted that they're not coming to St James's Park, like a full St James's Park, where I honestly think going in this game, that atmosphere in St James's Park in the ground would have been probably up there with the best that we've seen, because that would have pressurized
Saturday night, wasn't it?
Yeah, really would have pressurized them, and it's a shame that it hasn't happened. But like I said, it's a free hit on this one. If we get the win and go through, fantastic. But are we really expecting it?
I reckon it'd be just our luck to have a magnificent game against Man City and then it all falls apart against Norwich or something like that.
I'll take it, mate. I'll take it.
Paul, do you think it's wise to go into that game with the confidence now that we are effectively safe, or would you maybe say with this free hit we'll just see what happens and then focus on Bournemouth and really solidify our place and perhaps push on?
I think we're safe, no worries. I think we're safe, and I think the cup game against City, I think, is zero pressure. I think ultimately nobody expects us to go and play City and win. But I think what we can do is we've got a team that works hard and that grafts and that runs, and that's got a lot of very, very energetic players in it. And I think if we can go and just really just make it difficult for them, then I don't see any reason why we couldn't nick summit. In terms of what I would do based on the games coming up, I think I would maybe rotate the team a little bit, because I think I would maybe play three at the back. I think I would play Richie at wing back maybe, and I think I would play Hayden and Sean Longstaff if he's fit in the centre, and just going for just energy and just pace and just running and just really try and make it difficult for them. So I wouldn't necessarily have one eye on Bournemouth or anybody else like that afterwards, because I'd famous last words, but I do think we're safe. We're 1 point off 40, and while I think it will take more than 40 to get safety this year, obviously, I think we've got 7 games left, and some of them, Bournemouth, for example, that's a very, very winnable game. They're looking really, really poor since the restart. So I think why not just go for it? I don't see any reason to not, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the thoughts of many now. We've got nothing to lose going into that game. If we are to take advantage of anything out of City, I know they've looked brilliant in contrast to Bournemouth that you mentioned there, Paul. But Kris, is there any part of City that we can really exploit? And I think Aguero's probably going to be out, and he loves scoring against us, so that's one thing. But then there's a small matter of that fella Kevin De Bruyne who's not really done much this season.
I think we've got to take a page out of Rafa's book on this one, and sit back and absorb the pressure on this one, and rely on the likes of Almiron and Saint to get us those chances going forward on the counter attack. I think if you go toe to toe with Man City, you're always going to come out with the second best, aren't you? So absorb the pressure, hit them on the break. We've done it before, so fingers crossed we can go and get the next step and get that cup.
Okay, it's going to be one of them foil ones, isn't it? That people make and bring them to the game.
There's silverware coming out, are we?
Okay, right. Well, you know what? It's fair enough. It might be the cans. It might be the confidence. Paul, just quickly, you're over in Barcelona. Do you tell us a little about the thing that you do over there in terms of Newcastle fans who might be there?
So me and a lad called Mark have set up a supporters group in Barcelona. So if there's any Barcelona or nearby Barcelona Newcastle fans, then just get in touch with her. The group's called the GEORDIE Boys. That's spelled JORDI, and then the Twitter is JORDI_boys, BOYS. And basically we just meet up for every Toon match that we can. We've got a couple of bars that we frequent at the minute. It's one in Poblasec, which will mean something if you live in Barcelona. But we're also welcome to lads who come over for holidays, or if you're here for a stag or whatever, and you just want some people to watch the match, or somewhere where you know there'll be other Toon fans watching it. Just give us a shout, and we'll let you know where and when, and you can come watch a match with it. It's been good. We've only been doing it this season. We've got probably about 20 people who are involved, but considerably fewer who turn up every single week. But it's always a good laugh, and it's like it's a good crowd. So if you do happen to want to watch a match in Barcelona at any time, then just let me know.
And Paul's happy to put you up in his Airbnb, of course. That is. Did you hear that? You heard the Spanish song? I don't know if you've heard it yet, but have you heard the little Spanish commentary that's been going around after Newcastle's goal? Anyone?
Yeah.
It's
I think it's Argentinian, isn't it?
Is it Argentinian?
Yeah.
It's something to behold, but it's something that I never thought I'd hear for a Newcastle scoring a goal against Villa. Something like goal Newcastle. It's great. I think it's
like
one that could take off.
Yeah, it's a really strange thing. I can't work out if it's meant to be. He says the police, and so I assume it's meant to be a song by the police.
Something about the
Sting. Get Sting on the case.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think instead of the crowd noise, I'm just going to have that rolling in the background for the City game, just to be like in front of the TV, just hoping.
Speaking of the crowd noise, one of my mates texted us saying that he was disappointed that the BBC didn't have an option to have the crowd chanting Robbie Savage as a wanker.
Yo, of course.
It's a Newcastle song as far as I'm concerned. So, like, it is
was it earlier this season where Robbie Savage kicked off about that?
It was the Rochdale game when he was so embedded in the crowd that he was right next to them. I never just heard it. One final question before we go. Going on about viral videos once again. I suppose everyone's seen the video of John Terry on his bike today. Daryl, he was down the fish key. If the markets had been opened and John Terry was out there to buy some fish, what would he go for, do you reckon?
I think he'd be a standard cod man.
Right.
Definitely cod, maybe his haddock.
Chris, what would you go for? John Terry's fish?
Depends what Wayne Bridges bought on it.
Paul, I'll give you the final word on this one. John Terry buying fish, what's he going for?
I think he's going for a sea bass.
Right.
Sea bass. Just classic.
I thought a goldfish or something like
that.
Lads, I think we've covered everything quite literally with the John Terry and his bike thing with Aston Villa. Thanks for joining us for Extra Time tonight, and cheers.
Cheers.